Welcome to Fireplace Conversations, where African stories ignite global impact. I am Dr. Ikechukwu Okoh. I thank you for pulling up a chair and spending these moments with me. This podcast is where leadership meets humanity, where African stories become global lessons, where we gather not simply to learn, but to reflect, to think, to examine the invisible forces that shape our lives, our organizations, our communities, and ourselves. Today, I want to talk about something every leader wants, but very few truly understand: trust. Not the trust that appears in mission statements, not the trust that leaders demand, not even the trust that people publicly declare. I want to talk about the trust you lose without knowing, because in my experience, trust rarely collapses in a single dramatic moment. It disappears quietly, one conversation at a time, one broken promise at a time, one inconsistency at a time. And by the time many leaders realize it is gone, they are already leading people who have stopped believing them. So tonight, let's talk about trust. Not as a management concept, but as a human reality. Many years ago, while serving in Delta State, I was responsible for leading a group of doctors. Like many leaders, I was juggling competing demands. There were resource constraints, there were staffing challenges, there were pressures from above and expectations from below. Every day felt like an exercise in balancing impossible equations. One particular week, we needed to reorganize schedules. It seemed straightforward. At least it seemed straightforward to me. A few adjustments, a few shifts moved around, a few responsibilities redistributed. Nothing dramatic, nothing controversial. At least that was my assumption. I communicated the changes. I explained the rationale. I believed I had acted fairly. Then something unexpected happened. The resistance was immediate, not loud, not confrontational. Something far more dangerous: silence. People complied, but something had changed. Conversations became shorter, enthusiasm disappeared, volunteers became harder to find, suggestions stopped coming, meetings became quieter. At first, I thought the issue was the schedule itself. Perhaps people simply disliked the changes. But as weeks passed, I realized the schedule was not the real problem. The real issue was trust. You see, several months earlier, I had made a commitment regarding how future scheduling decisions would be handled. I had promised consultation. I had promised involvement. I had promised transparency. When pressure arrived, I still believed in those values. But in the urgency of solving the immediate problem, I bypassed the very process I had promised. The decision itself was not the issue. The inconsistency was. People did not feel betrayed by the schedule. They felt betrayed by the gap between what I said and what I did. And that experience taught me one of the most important lessons of my leadership journey. Trust is not destroyed by your intentions. Trust is shaped by your behavior. People cannot see your intentions. They only experience your actions. That lesson has followed me from Nigeria to Saudi Arabia and to the UK. From boardrooms to emergency departments. From executive coaching conversations to startup advisory sessions. Because the same pattern appears everywhere. Leaders lose trust without noticing, not because they are dishonest, not because they are malicious, but because they underestimate how carefully people watch consistency. Let us talk about the bigger question. Why does this happen? Why do competent leaders lose trust? Why do organizations with talented people develop cultures of suspicion? Why do employees stop speaking honestly? Why do teams become disengaged? Why do founders lose followers? Why do communities lose faith in institutions? Most people think trust is about character. And character matters. But trust is also about predictability. Human beings are constantly asking a simple question: can I rely on you? Not occasionally. Not when it is convenient, not when conditions are perfect. Can I rely on you consistently? Because uncertainty creates anxiety, and trust is what reduces uncertainty. A trusted leader provides stability. A trusted friend provides safety. A trusted institution provides confidence. Trust allows people to move forward without constantly questioning motives. That is why trust is one of the most valuable currencies in leadership. And like every currency, it can be accumulated or spent. The danger is that many leaders notice only the large withdrawals. They fail to notice the small ones. Yet it is the small withdrawals that often cause bankruptcy. As we say in many African communities, a clay pot does not break because of one drop of water. It breaks because of countless drops over time. Trust works the same way. The collapse may look sudden, the erosion was gradual. Before we go further, let's pause by the fire for a moment. We've talked about a seemingly ordinary leadership decision that created unexpected resistance. What appeared to be a scheduling issue turned out to be something deeper: trust. We've also explored an uncomfortable truth. Trust rarely disappears overnight. More often, it erodes quietly through small moments we barely notice. In the next part of our conversation, let's look at how trust is built slowly, lost quietly, and why the smallest leadership behaviors often matter the most. Welcome back. Trust is built slowly but lost quietly. In emergency medicine, there is a phrase we often encounter: the patient deteriorated unexpectedly. Yet, when we review the case, we frequently discover the deterioration was not truly unexpected. There were warning signs, small changes, subtle indicators, signals that seemed insignificant at the time. Trust follows a similar pattern. Most trust failures are visible long before the collapse. People notice when leaders arrive late repeatedly, when promises become optional, when feedback is requested but ignored, when accountability applies only to some people, when standards change depending on who is involved. Each incident appears small, but trust does not measure individual events. Trust measures patterns. A single missed promise may be forgiven. A pattern becomes a reputation, and reputation is simply trust viewed over time. I once coached a senior executive whose team described him as intelligent, hardworking, and visionary, yet they did not trust him. Why? Because every month he announced new priorities. Every month he shifted direction. Every month people invested effort in initiatives that were abandoned before completion. He was not dishonest, he was enthusiastic, but his inconsistency created uncertainty, and uncertainty we can trust. One day a member of his team said something profound: "We don't wait for his instructions anymore. We wait to see if he changes his mind." Think about that. The leader still had authority, but he had lost credibility. And once credibility weakens, influence begins to fade. Trust is not built through grand gestures. It is built through repeated reliability. The small things matter, perhaps especially the small things, because people use small behaviors to predict larger ones. If you are careless with small commitments, why would people trust you with larger ones? Trust is built slowly, lost quietly, and recovered painfully. That is why leaders must pay attention to the little things. The little things are rarely little. Let's take a moment to reflect. So far, we've seen that trust is not built through grand speeches or occasional acts of heroism. It is built through repeated reliability, through consistency, through the small promises people remember long after we have forgotten them. But trust is not only about what leaders do. It is also about the distance between what leaders say and what leaders actually do. In the next part, we'll explore why people believe behavior more than words, and why competence alone is never enough to sustain trust. Welcome back. Do you know that there is a gap between words and actions? There is a saying I heard growing up that has stayed with me for years. What an elder sees sitting down, a child cannot see standing on a tree. When I was younger, I thought that proverb was about wisdom. Today, I think it is also about observation. People are always watching. Not in a paranoid sense, not because they are trying to catch leaders making mistakes, but because people naturally look for evidence. They listen to what leaders say, then they compare it to what leaders do, and trust lives or dies in that comparison. The greatest threat to trust is not incompetence, it is inconsistency, the distance between words and actions. I remember a conversation with a senior leader I coached last year. He was frustrated. His team seemed disengaged. Morale was low. Communication was poor. People rarely challenged ideas. Innovation had slowed. He could not understand why. After all, he regularly told his team, "My door is always open." That was one of his favorite phrases. He genuinely believed it. Then I asked a simple question. "When was the last time somebody disagreed with you publicly?" He paused, then smiled. That almost never happens. At first, he saw that as evidence of alignment. In reality, it was evidence of fear. When we explored further, a pattern emerged. Whenever someone challenged him in meetings, he became defensive, not intentionally, not aggressively, but enough for people to notice, enough for people to learn, enough for people to decide that honesty carried risk. His words said, "My door is always open." His behavior said, "Enter at your own risk." People believe the behavior, not the words, and that is what human beings do, always. Because behavior is evidence. Words are merely claims. One of the most powerful leadership questions is this: if nobody heard what I said, what would they conclude from what I did? That question can be uncomfortable, but it is revealing, because trust is built less by what leaders announce and more by what leaders demonstrate. Children understand this instinctively. Employees understand this instinctively. Patients understand this instinctively. Citizens understand this instinctively. We all do. Imagine a leader who talks endlessly about teamwork but takes personal credit. A founder who talks about transparency but hides information. A manager who talks about accountability but avoids accountability personally. A parent who talks about honesty but is dishonest in small matters. The contradiction becomes the message. The action becomes the truth. People rarely remember every speech. They remember patterns. They remember behavior. They remember how leadership felt. And that feeling becomes trust or distrust. Tonight, I want to tell you that competence is not enough. This lesson took me years to fully appreciate. Early in my career, I believed competence was the answer. Work hard, know your subject, develop expertise, deliver results, and people will trust you. There is some truth in that. Competence matters a lot. If I walk into an emergency department, I want the clinician treating me to know what they are doing. If I board an aircraft, I want the pilot to be competent. If I invest in a startup, I want capable founders. Competence matters, but competence alone does not create trust, because trust has two dimensions: capability and character. People ask, "Can you do the job?" But they also ask, "Can I trust how you will do it?" Those are different questions. Over the years, I have worked with exceptionally talented people. Some inspired extraordinary loyalty. Others struggled to retain followers. The difference was rarely intelligence. It was usually consistency, integrity, humility, and reliability. One NHS experience reinforced this lesson for me. There was a consultant respected throughout the department. Clinically brilliant, calm under pressure, technically excellent. But what made people trust him wasn't his expertise. It was something else. When he promised support, support arrived. When he committed to helping a junior doctor, he followed through. When he admitted uncertainty, he admitted it openly. When he made mistakes, he owned them. People trusted him because he was predictable in the best possible way. Predictable integrity, predictable honesty, predictable reliability. That is a powerful combination. Competence earns admiration. Character earns trust. The strongest leaders possess both. And if forced to choose, most people would rather follow a trustworthy leader with modest brilliance than a brilliant leader they cannot trust. Because uncertainty exhausts people. Trust liberates them. In Leadership Pulse, I often talk about what I call the trust deposit framework. Imagine trust as a bank account. Every interaction either makes a deposit or a withdrawal. You may not notice every transaction, but the balance is always changing. Deposits include keeping promises, listening carefully, being transparent, admitting mistakes, showing respect, remaining consistent, giving credit, being fair. Withdrawals include broken commitments, favoritism, hidden agendas, defensiveness, inconsistency, disrespect, blame shifting, avoiding accountability. The challenge is that leaders often focus on major withdrawals. The organization focuses on daily transactions. A leader remembers one major success. Employees remember 100 small interactions. A founder remembers the vision. The team remembers the behavior. A government remembers policy announcements. Citizens remember lived experience. Trust is rarely determined by speeches. It is determined by repeated transactions. And just like a financial account, the healthiest relationships maintain a surplus. That surplus matters because difficult moments eventually come. Mistakes happen. Crises emerge. Pressure increases. Nobody leads perfectly. But leaders with trust reserves can survive mistakes. Leaders without trust reserves often cannot. The same mistake produces different outcomes because the trust balance is different. Trust creates resilience. Distrust creates fragility. That is why trust must be built before it is needed, not after. Because when the storm arrives, construction time is over. The foundation has already been tested. Pull your chair a little closer to the fire. We've discussed how trust is built through consistency, how behavior speaks louder than intention, and why character matters just as much as competence. We've also explored the idea that every interaction is either a deposit or a withdrawal from the trust account. But there is another layer to this conversation. Sometimes trust is damaged not by individuals, but by the systems they operate within. In the next section, we'll step back and examine the hidden structures, incentives, and cultures that quietly destroy trust inside organizations and communities. It is high time we ask the big question: why organizations accidentally destroy trust? One of the reasons I became fascinated by systems thinking is because it helped me understand something important. Most trust failures are not individual failures. They are system failures. That may sound strange. After all, trust feels personal. And it is personal, but it is also structural. Think about healthcare. When a patient experiences poor care, we often look for the individual responsible. Sometimes that is appropriate, but often the real causes lie deeper. Poor processes, conflicting incentives, broken communication, staff shortages, flawed systems. The same principle applies to leadership. Many organizations claim they value trust, yet they build systems that quietly undermine it. For example, they reward short-term results while preaching long-term relationships. They encourage collaboration while promoting internal competition. They celebrate transparency while punishing bad news. They ask for innovation while punishing failure. The stated values and the actual incentives are moving in opposite directions. And whenever that happens, incentives usually win. Culture follows behavior. Behavior follows incentives. Trust follows consistency. I once worked with an organization that repeatedly conducted employee engagement surveys. Every year, the surveys were detailed, thoughtful, comprehensive. Employees provided honest feedback, yet nothing changed. Year after year, eventually participation declined. People stopped taking the survey seriously, not because they disliked feedback, but because they no longer trusted the process. The organization believed it was encouraging openness. Employees experienced performative listening, a subtle but important difference. Trust dies when people believe their voice does not matter. That lesson extends beyond organizations. It applies to governments, families, communities, relationships, leadership. The question is not whether you ask people to trust. The question is whether your system deserves their trust. Because trust is not a communication problem. It is often a design problem. In this part of this podcast, we will discuss how to sustain trust during crisis. If trust is tested anywhere, it is during crisis. Anyone can appear trustworthy when conditions are comfortable. The real test comes when pressure arrives. I learned this repeatedly in emergency medicine. The emergency department has a way of revealing reality. When the waiting room is overflowing, when resources are stretched, when emotions are running high, when uncertainty dominates, people show you who they really are. Leaders do too. During crises, many leaders make mistakes. They withdraw. They communicate less. They become distant. They assume silence creates stability. In reality, silence often creates anxiety. One thing I have observed across Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, and the United Kingdom is that people can tolerate difficult news. What they struggle with is uncertainty. Uncertainty fills the vacuum with fear. Trustworthy leaders understand this. They communicate early. They communicate honestly. And they communicate consistently. Even when they do not have all the answers. Especially when they do not have all the answers. One of the most powerful phrases a leader can say is, "I don't know yet." Not because uncertainty inspires confidence, but because honesty does. Trust grows when people believe they are hearing the truth, even if the truth is incomplete. In fact, some leaders damage trust by pretending certainty they do not possess. People eventually discover the reality, and once credibility cracks, rebuilding it becomes difficult. Trust does not require perfection, it requires honesty. That distinction matters. How do you repair damaged trust? Perhaps as you listen today, you are thinking about a relationship that has weakened, a team that has become disengaged, a colleague who has grown distant, a family member who no longer believes your promises, a community that has lost confidence. What then? Can trust be repaired? Yes, but not through words alone. Trust is rebuilt the same way it was built originally, through repeated evidence. Many leaders attempt to repair trust through explanations, long explanations, detailed explanations, passionate explanations. Yet trust rarely returns because somebody explained better. Trust returns when behavior changes consistently, and that takes time. One conversation rarely repairs 100 disappointments. One apology rarely reverses years of inconsistency. The process is slower than most leaders want, but there is good news. People are remarkably willing to forgive when they see genuine effort, when they see accountability, when they see humility, when they see change. Trust does not require flawlessness. It requires credibility. People do not expect leaders to be perfect. They expect leaders to be real. One of the strongest trust-building behaviors is surprisingly simple. Own your mistakes, not selectively, not defensively, not strategically. Honestly, the fastest way to weaken trust is by pretending you are never wrong. The fastest way to strengthen trust is showing people how you respond. As we sit by the fire today, I want to leave you with 3 questions. Not for your organization, not for your team, for yourself. The first question is, where is there a gap between what I say and what I consistently do? Not occasionally, consistently. What patterns would people notice if they observe me closely? The second question is, what promises have I unintentionally abandoned? Not because I meant to, but because life became busy, pressure increased, priorities shifted. Who might still be carrying disappointment I have forgotten? The third question you should reflect on is, if trust were a bank account, what would my recent transactions reveal? Deposits, withdrawals, or both? And what does the balance look like today? As we come to the end of the conversations tonight, here are 3 practical actions for you. Number 1, identify one promise you need to keep. Not next month, not next year, this week. Trust grows when commitments become reality. The second action is to ask someone you trust, what is one thing I do that weakens trust without realizing it? Then listen. Do not defend. Do not explain. Thirdly, choose consistency over intensity. Trust is built through small, reliable actions. Consistency compounds. Before we end tonight's conversation, let's gather the threads together. Trust is not a communication strategy. It is not a leadership technique. It is not something people owe us because of our title or experience. Trust is earned through repeated evidence. And perhaps the most sobering lesson of all is this: people are always paying attention. The question is not whether you are building trust. The question is what you are teaching people to trust you for. Let me leave you with one final story. Years after that scheduling incident in Delta State, I reflected on what happened. The schedules eventually changed again. The operational issues were resolved. People moved on. The crisis passed. Yet the lesson remained. Because the issue was never really about schedules. It was about trust. It was about the invisible contract between leaders and followers. The understanding that words matter. Commitments matter. Behavior matters. And perhaps most importantly, consistency matters. I often think about leadership as similar to tending a fire. You do not build a strong fire with one enormous log. You build it gradually, patiently, piece by piece, attention by attention, day by day. Trust works the same way. A trusted leader is rarely created in dramatic moments. Trustworthy leaders are built through ordinary moments repeated consistently. The meeting attended, the promise kept, the difficult truth told, the mistake admitted, the credit shared, the person respected. Over time, those moments become a reputation, and reputation becomes trust. This is the final reflection before we leave the fireplace tonight. People rarely leave because of one betrayal. They leave because of 1,000 disappointments. The encouraging truth is that trust is built the same way, not through one grand gesture, but through 1,000 acts of consistency. So before you focus on becoming more persuasive, more influential, or more powerful, focus on becoming more reliable. because trust is the foundation upon which every meaningful form of leadership rests. And without it, even the strongest structures eventually weaken. Pull your chair closer to the fire. The people who trust you have given you something precious. Protect it carefully, earn it continually, and never assume it is permanent. This has been Fireplace Conversations with Dr. Ikechukwu Okoh. Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep the fire burning. Good night.